In celebration of Martin Ødegaard having signed a new 5-year deal with the Gunners, we're going to discuss on this bonus edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner how Martin Ødegaard went from good to world class.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're all good. Hope you are well on this Saturday afternoon. It's the day before the North London derby. Perhaps the nerves are starting to kick in. They certainly have for me, because I am desperate to see Arsenal go out and win this one. But we're not going to be talking about that on this edition of the podcast. We're going to push it to one side. And if you want to hear more about the North London derby, well, you can go back to yesterday's show, where we previewed it in detail and, of course, discussed the news that Martin Ødegaard has signed a new contract with the club. The Gunners captain committing his future to Arsenal for another 5 seasons at least. And we're going to get into Martin Ødegaard's rise on this very edition of the podcast, because I think it has been a tremendous rise. There's no doubt about that. Martin Ødegaard has gone from being a promising young talent to somebody that kind of was cast aside by Real Madrid because they didn't really feel he was ready. And at a club like Real Madrid, you've got to be ready, haven't you? And he bounced around a little bit, went to various different clubs on loan, has come to Arsenal, initially on loan, found a home, found a place where he feels wanted, and it has become a real central part of our project. I called him on yesterday's show a flagship player in this Arsenal project. And I think over the time that he's been here, he's gone from being a good player to a very good player to now someone that we can call world class. And I genuinely believe that. And I think there will be, of course, rival fans out there that will disagree with that, that will say, what are you talking about? You're jumping the gun a little bit here, calling Martin Ødegaard world class. But I genuinely believe he is in that category now when it comes to players in his position. How do you define world class? That's a difficult question, isn't it? Because everybody has kind of different parameters by, how they sort of, or how they then judge a player and say, is he world class? Is he not? For me, if you're in like the top 2 or 3, top 3, 4, 5 in your position, then there's an argument to say that you're world class. And Martin Ødegaard, for me, is definitely now in that bracket. But as what? As a 10, as an 8, we'll get into all of that on this edition of the podcast. Big hello to everybody joining us in the live chat at the moment. We've got DD Chan, who says he is world class, ? To me, he is. Let me know your thoughts, of course. If he's not, in your opinion, why is he not? Let me know. We've got Mohammed, who joins us as well. He says, big up, Harry, my friend. Hope you're good, mate. We've got Rob in the chat. We've got Wandering Minstrel. We've got Melanie. We've got Haris joining us as well. Joey joins us. He says, cheers, Harry. I'm feeling confident about the North London derby, especially with the announcement of Ødegaard's contract. I've loved Martin since day one, so he's world class. Brilliant. We've also got Neo in the chat as well. He says, come on, you Gunners. Look, I'm not going to bore you for too long. Let's dive straight into the Martin Ødegaard chat. Let's have a look at the journey with some top-line statistics and some analysis as to how Martin Ødegaard went from being a good player to a great player to a world-class operator. We're going to do that right now on the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast live. Right then, let's get into this. Okay, so how Martin Ødegaard went from good to world class. Now, obviously, this is based on my opinion, and obviously, I've included some statistics in here, some facts in here to back up my case and back up my argument. I've also included some analysis from one particular match, because I think there's one particular match that when I think about Martin Ødegaard's influence, that always comes to mind, particularly in this past, 6 to 12 months. It would be the home victory against Chelsea towards the back end of last season, where it was literally the Martin Ødegaard show. So I've picked out some bits from that game to highlight some of the components that I think make Martin Ødegaard brilliant. And then I'm going to talk a little bit later on about how tactically, or why I think tactically this is the best team for him as well, because I think that's important too. I think he's found a home and he's found a club where he fits in perfectly. He's found a manager who wants to build around him. and has put all the components in place to help Martin Ødegaard lift his own level and get to the point where I'm now talking about him as being a world-class player. So we're going to do all of that on this show. Listen, I went through tons of statistics this morning. I could have picked out lots and lots of data and just chucked it on the screen and let people drown in it. That's not what I'm going to do. I've picked out certain bits that I think are relevant. And with the analysis, I could have gone over 20, 30 matches, but I didn't because I'll be here all day. Plus, nobody wants to listen to a 5-hour podcast. So anyway, let's get into it. How Martin Ødegaard went from good to world class. There he is, the main man, having signed on the dotted line yesterday. Let's start off by having a look at Martin Ødegaard's record before Arsenal, because I think it's important to take stock of this to understand where he's come from. Martin Ødegaard, of course, initially joined the club on loan from Real Madrid. And in the end, the club, Arsenal, decided to make that permanent, thrashed out negotiations with Real Madrid and got him for a really, really reasonable price of around about 30 to 35 million pounds, which in today's market is an absolute steal. So prior to joining Arsenal, he played for the Real Madrid Castilla side, of course. He played for Real Madrid, the A team, if you like, on 11 occasions. He played for Strom Godset in Norway. I think I've said that right. Real Sociedad, Vitesse Arnhem, and Heerenveen. Now, he spent loan spells at those three last minute. Here we go. I lost my mic there for a second. I don't know what happened. Anyway, as I was saying, he spent some time at Heerenveen, Vitesse Arnhem, and Real Sociedad on loan. And if you look at those records, what do you see? You see a player that makes quite a few appearances. So clear before he even joined Arsenal that he was quite robust physically, in that he didn't, touch wood, pick up injuries too frequently. He certainly wasn't one of those players that was in the team for 5 games and then would be out for 3 games. You know, you get a lot of that. And often you see that with players, and you look at them and you go, well, I'm going to give you another contract. I'm going to give you more time. I'm going to give you the opportunity to prove me wrong, because the talent is there. And sometimes I think as football managers, what can happen is you can get caught in this sort of whirlwind, and you can fall into a trap whereby you persist with someone because of talent alone, but actually it's about the whole package. It's about availability as well. All of that stuff is really, really important. So Martin Ødegaard, you know, for Real Madrid, 11 appearances for the first team, hardly any of which were from the start. I don't think, in fact, any of them were from the start. And he didn't score any goals, didn't get any assists. If you go back to his time in Norway, 5 goals in 25 appearances, 7 assists, showing that he's a creative force at that point more than anything else. Take it on to Real Sociedad again, you know, 7 goals in a 36 appearance season, not bad. 9 assists. Again, the creator side of Martin Ødegaard sort of really shining there. Vitesse Arnhem, 39 appearances, 11 goals and 13 assists. Decent goal return, but it's the Dutch Eredivisie, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but obviously the standard isn't as high. But again, the creative side of Martin Ødegaard taking the lead here. And even when you look at his time at Heerenveen, where he wasn't really that successful, if we're being honest, 43 appearances during that time. He scored 3 goals, which isn't a lot, and he got 5 assists. But again, the creator side of Martin Ødegaard taking precedent. If I highlight these 2 spells in particular, the spells at Vitesse Arnhem and at Real Sociedad, you started to see signs of the fact that Martin Ødegaard could be more than just a creator who chips in with a goal from time to time. He started to show people that actually, if he plays regularly and if he gets into the right positions and if the system works for him, you know, we all know that technically he's a wonderful footballer. There's no reason why he couldn't start to up those goals. And those 2 loan spells, I think, showed people that, yes, he is still, if you look at that statistically, predominantly a creator, but there is more to his game. He can add those goals. And with a bit more work, he could up those numbers, which he's gone on to do as his career's gone on. If we take it on to the next slide, Ødegaard's record since joining Arsenal, this is really, I think, interesting, because you can see the progression, right? So Martin Ødegaard comes in for the second half of the 2020-21 season, plays 14 times for Arsenal in the Premier League. I've decided to narrow it down to the Premier League so it doesn't get too complicated. Just the 1 goal and just the 2 assists. And at that point, I remember, and I feel like I've said this a few times actually recently, but I remember at that point coming on here talking about transfer targets in the summer and saying, I believe that Mikel Arteta and Arsenal really like Martin Ødegaard and that they are going to do what they can to get him in the door. They feel that he is the answer. They feel that he is someone that they could build the team around. And they will feel that if they hold fire and play hardball a little bit with Real Madrid, who clearly wanted to move him on at that time, despite what was being said in the media, they could get him for a reasonable price. That's what Arsenal did. They resisted the temptation to go and bring in someone like Emi Buendia, and they chose to prioritize the ceiling of the player rather than necessarily the level he was at that moment in time. So in the second half of the 2021 season, he played 14 times for Arsenal in the Premier League, scored just the 1 goal and got 2 assists. If you take that on then to the 21-22 season, where he played 36 times in the Premier League for Arsenal, after, of course, that deal was made permanent, 7 goals, which is a decent return, and 4 assists. So he's managed to up his output levels. Now, obviously, I'm conscious of the fact that the season before he played less than half the games, but in comparison to sort of the amount of games he played, he managed to up the ratio of goals and assists in comparison to appearances a little bit, but it still wasn't, tearing up trees. It still wasn't, wow, look at this guy. I can't believe we didn't think about signing him permanently from the off. This is something that's developed over time, and Mikel Arteta's trusted him, given him time to breathe. And then you take it on to last season, where in 37 Premier League appearances, Martin Ødegaard scored 15 goals and provided 8 assists. Those are wonderful, wonderful numbers in the Premier League. You're talking about the most difficult league in the world. He more than doubled his goal tally, of course, but he doubled his assist tally from the 2021 season in the 2022-23 campaign. So you can see a clear line of positive trajectory as far as Martin Ødegaard's concerned, with regards to how he's progressed and how he's been able to then not just help the team win the ball back, press, which are all the other things that he does, which we're going to come on to in a little bit, that you don't always measure with such clear statistics. You need to dig a little bit deeper to realize that. But you can see that he was starting to impact the team more and more and more. The more he played for Arsenal, the more he adapted to the Premier League, and the more the team was evolving, I think, around him as well, which is also a key point. Last season, Martin Ødegaard was the top scoring midfield player in the Premier League. And when you think of some of the wonderful midfield players that exist and live in this division, then you've got to say that is really, really impressive in itself. Take it on to Martin Ødegaard off the ball. Now, as I say, I could have literally copied and pasted spreadsheets onto here, but I decided not to do that. I decided to pick out some key points because I think this summarizes Martin Ødegaard's influence and what he brings to the team off of the ball. Martin Ødegaard won possession in the final third more times, 53 times, than any other player in Europe's top 7 divisions since the start of the 2022-23 season. And he scored more league goals, 17, than any other central midfielder in that time. If that in itself doesn't highlight how much of an influence Martin Ødegaard has in possession and out of possession, and how much of an all-rounder he is, then I don't know what will. It's there for you in black and white. Ødegaard is a ball winner, although not in the areas you'd expect a traditional ball winner to do his best work. You think ball winner, you think defensive midfielder, you think Rodri, you think Rice, you think Partey. But actually, Martin Ødegaard is just as effective a ball winner, just in a different area of the pitch. In the past, he's been labelled as a number 10, but at Arsenal, he's developed into a far more sophisticated player than that, and he's key to the high pressing style. He's a leader by example, both in and out of possession. Why Arsenal are the perfect fit for Martin Ødegaard tactically. And I think this is really, really important as well, because we've seen many players over the years have the talent to succeed and have the talent to go on and be great footballers, but not necessarily fulfill that potential because perhaps the environment around them wasn't right. Well, this is the perfect environment for Martin Ødegaard. And as I say, I'm going to go back to the game against Chelsea towards the back end of last season, because that really was the Martin Ødegaard show. And I think there are some clear examples of what he does well. His intelligence, how he's become quite unpredictable as well, which gives him the space, but also how other people have been able to open doors for Martin Ødegaard to then go on and up his level. So if we start with this clip here. Now, this is from that Chelsea game, and Arsenal on this occasion opted to go that little bit more direct up towards Gabriel Jesus. Now, you can see Martin Ødegaard here sort of alert to the situation, wanting to get close to Gabriel Jesus, but he's not the only one. To his left, you can see Granit Xhaka as well, who was playing that role very, very well for Arsenal last season. Also been instructed to, when the ball goes that little bit more direct to Gabriel Jesus, who isn't the biggest player in the world, but we know is capable of bringing it down, holding it up, causing a nuisance, forcing the defender to head the ball into a dangerous area, even if he doesn't get a touch on it, because of his sheer presence. You can see that those two players have been instructed to follow that up. As I say, Jesus' arrival, for me, elevated Arsenal's game to another level. The way he can single-handedly occupy a couple of centre-backs, even when we go slightly more direct, as I say, creates spaces for Ødegaard and the left-sided number 8 to drive into. And once Ødegaard's in that area, he's proven that he can make things happen. This is the area that I'm talking about, the area that I've highlighted here, that I've circled. And again, this is one of those episodes that if you want to go over and watch it, if you're listening to it on audio, I'm doing my best to describe what I can. But you might want to go and watch this one with the visual aids. But the area that I've highlighted is that area that gets left in between a team's backline and midfield, because we've gone direct and our players were the first to react to try and get up close to Gabriel Jesus, meaning that they've left the midfielders of the opposition in their wake and they stand a great chance of getting to the ball first. If I take this on a little bit more, the situation develops and Arsenal end up having the ball on the left-hand side. And again, you can see Martin Ødegaard having got to the edge of the penalty area. Now, most players, realizing that a cross is going to come in, would move towards the goal. But Ødegaard, as we've seen, very, very often, wants to own that space on the edge of the box. So what does Martin Ødegaard do? Actually, Martin Ødegaard decides to move the other way. And when the ball breaks to him in that position, right on the edge of the box, he's got the space and he's got the technical ability to then stroke it home into the bottom corner. Now, I'm not going to take it on to show you the actual goal. I can't show clips for copyright reasons, but this is an example of a typical Martin Ødegaard movement on the edge of the box. But that is only possible, and that space is only created because there are runners into the box. In that screenshot alone, you can see Jesus, Trossard, and Saka all inside the penalty area. That's more than enough for the Chelsea defense to have to worry about. And you can see, I think it's Kovacic there, who's trying to get back into the penalty area to support, is panicking at the fact that he's looked and he's seen Saka, Trossard, and Jesus getting into the box, needs the support, feels the need to get close to his backline, leaving a gaping hole behind him. Why? Because the other team's forward line are not working hard enough to get back. And Arsenal know that it's very rare that you're going to get a team that can go from an attack to that defensive shape that's required quick enough. So Ødegaard makes a typical Martin Ødegaard movement and drops to the edge of the box, and he goes on to finish and give Arsenal the lead in that game. We continue on our why Arsenal are the perfect fit for Ødegaard tactically with another example, and it's an example of another typical Martin Ødegaard movement, which shows us that there is real variety to his game. Now, in this instance here, you can see Martin Ødegaard again taking up position on the edge of the penalty area. It's the same match. It's a similar situation. But on this occasion, as play progresses, Ødegaard recognizes that his teammates are following up behind him. And so he makes a different movement. You can see that Martin Ødegaard, has the intention on this occasion of drifting in between the two centre halves. Why? Because he's got Granit Xhaka in that position, who's ready to join in with the play. And he's got Ben White, who's tucked in from right back, who's also ready to join in the play. He's got Saka on the outside of him as well, which you can't see in the screenshot there. So on this occasion, he looks over his shoulder. He recognizes that actually he doesn't need to occupy that space. And what he does is he leaves the fact that Xhaka and White are coming in as a problem for Kovacic and Sterling there, who's on the edge of the box, to deal with. As a result of that, we get into this situation where the ball is delivered into the box. Ødegaard has got that little bit of extra space, enough to get the shot off. And he's got the space to get the shot off because, as I say, the players that were on the edge of the box were too concerned about Ben White and Granit Xhaka, and you can see in the second screenshot that Ben White has got up to the edge of the penalty area, which will have delayed Raheem Sterling's movement to try and help close down Martin Ødegaard. You can see that Xhaka's got into that's Jesus, sorry, in the box as well, which has taken away the attentions of Kovacic. And then you can also see that Bukayo Saka's come in field, which has given the left back something to worry about as well, which means he can't go and engage and help that centre back that is trying to close Martin Ødegaard. That slight delay in closing him down and engaging with him that is caused by runners being present and sort of, you know, confusing defenders or making them hesitate as to who they should be closing down, when and where, is what gives Martin Ødegaard that little bit of extra space to receive the ball and get the shot off before he's closed down. And as I say, that's down to the movement of Saka, that's down to the movement of White, it's down to the movement of Trossard on the far side, and it's down to the movement of Jesus as well in the box. Jesus has been a massive, massive part of this for me. And I don't want to take it away from any of the other players, because I think lots of them have been involved in this and lots of them have helped Martin Ødegaard, I think, hit tip-top form because of what they do. But this just highlights what a great, well-oiled machine and functional machine the Arsenal system has become, if you like, under Mikel Arteta. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody understands why they're doing it. And you can see the results at the moment, week in, week out. So they're just a couple of examples of typical Martin Ødegaard movements. And the reason those movements often lead to Martin Ødegaard getting goal-scoring opportunities, therefore increasing his outputs in terms of goals and assists, are because, you know, it's all just working so well, and it's all so well refined, and everybody understands what they're doing, and it's a collective effort. But Martin Ødegaard has got to then put those chances away, which he's now doing. You know, he's got to make those moments count, which he's now doing way more often than he did before. And that'll be due to confidence. That'll be due to his status rising as a footballer and his belief in himself, having found the home, all the rest of it. I think it's fantastic to see Martin Ødegaard really sort of upping it a level. But the reason I wanted to do this part, why Arsenal were the perfect fit for Ødegaard tactically, is because I think this is a collective evolution that is now serving individual players in terms of them raising their own levels as well. And I think it's really, really important to highlight that. So, yeah, that's my kind of analysis on Martin Ødegaard. That's his journey to world-class status, explained from my perspective. We focused on what he brings on the ball, what he brings off the ball, why he's able to get into positions from which he's able to contribute way more goals and way more assists. And I think he deserves a ton of praise for getting there, but also Mikel Arteta deserves a ton of praise for understanding you know, how to pull teams apart, how to get his best players on the ball as often as possible and into the right areas, into the areas from which they can do damage. It's taken time for Arsenal as a football club to get to this point. At the start of Mikel Arteta's tenure, you certainly didn't see this type of football that often. It was boring at times. It was drab. It was dull, and we couldn't work out from the very beginning what was needed. But as he's gradually got his players in and he's been able to sort of drill them in the right way, making smart additions here and there along the way, we're now in a place where the machine works great, but also individuals are thriving as a result of that. Just in that second slide again, have a look at Bukayo Saka's position there. He's literally like a centre forward. And people often ask me, why do you think it is that Bukayo Saka has got more goals and has increased his outputs? Yeah, he still cuts in off the right-hand side and whips balls in with that left foot of his. But he also pops up in really, really dangerous areas on the edge of the 6-yard box, because Arteta's wide forwards are exactly that. They're not necessarily out-and-out wingers. They might start there when they want to receive the ball and all the rest of it. But you can see as moves develop that they're tasked with arriving on the corners of the 6-yard box. You can see in that second screenshot that Trossard is on his way to the corner of the 6-yard box on the other side. And then all of a sudden, the ball could drop anywhere within that 6-yard box vicinity, and you stand a great chance of getting on the end of it first and scoring. We saw Saka do that against PSV, didn't we, in midweek? So, yeah, really, really excited by Martin Ødegaard's development. Fantastic news that he signed a new contract. We explained and discussed that and what it means for the football club on yesterday's show, so you can check that out. But I just wanted to do a special short bonus edition of the podcast, focusing, as I say, on Martin Ødegaard's rise to world-class status. If you don't think he's world-class, let me know in the comments why. What does he have to do to elevate himself up to world-class status? You tell me. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. I hope you've enjoyed this analysis show. I've enjoyed putting these breakdowns together, actually, over the last few days. I'm hoping to do more of them as time goes on. Let me know what you think of the format, of the style of the show in the comments. As I say, don't forget to like, subscribe, all the rest of it. And I'll be back tomorrow after, of course, the North London Derby. Come on, you Gunners. Catch you all soon. Thanks for watching.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.